It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? It's the Take Command podcast. Logan Paulsen there. Craig Hoffman here. Happy to be with you. Full transparency. We're recording this a little bit later today, about 1:20 in the afternoon, which means like 5 minutes ago, Logan, we learned the Commanders are going to play on Sunday Night Football in Week 17. You ready for a late night?
Yeah, no, I mean, some people are really excited about it, obviously, but for me, it's like, man, it pushes all of our prep back. It pushes, you know what I mean? So I have to watch the game no matter what, and I always prefer that nice 1 o'clock because I can be home and do some stuff. But it's always exciting for the team to get some national pub and a national spotlight, especially when they're making this playoff push, which is great.
For sure. That's what I posted. I was like, this is my own personal hell, but I'm excited for the team and I'm excited for the fans because, by the way, there's a chance they could clinch that night. And if
which would be great.
If they can clinch on Sunday Night Football, that stadium is going to be on fire. That's going to be the best crowd at Northwest Stadium probably since y'all were playing in 2012. And there have been some good ones this year, but that one will be different. And obviously it depends on how they play against Philadelphia. We'll preview that on Thursday, but let's talk about how they played against New Orleans, which doesn't really have a lot of people excited right now, Logan. And we're going to start with the offense. The defensive tape was way more interesting than I thought. So we'll get to that, obviously, as well. But everyone wants to know about the 8 sacks. Everyone wants to know, why did Jayden Daniels get sacked 8 times? A couple of things just off the top. Dan Quinn talked about this. We talked about some of this on the postgame show. And I know you and I have been talking about some of this over the last 2 days, texting back and forth. First of all, 2 of these sacks are 0-yard gains where Jayden just as easily could have thrown the ball out of bounds for the same result. So we're really talking about kind of 6 actual sacks. And both in terms of like yardage, but also like the impact then the sack has. How negative is the play? How does it affect the rest of the drive? I also think that as we get into these, the sacks themselves often are not going to wind up being on the offensive line, which is a weird conundrum because the offensive line actually didn't play well. It just didn't happen to necessarily result in the sacks. And then also some of these sacks are going to wind up coming back on Jayden, but Jayden actually did, I think, play really well. So there's this kind of weird conundrum as we try to make sense of the game at large through the context of the sacks. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense, but we're going to try anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you hit that like perfectly. It's sacks generally, at least viewed by the statistical community, tend to be quarterback-driven sacks. So like quarterback-driven stat, excuse me. So I think this is going to maybe be very illuminating in that department. Are there plays where the offensive line could play better? Sure. Are there plays where the offensive line, played great and Jayden took sacks? Yes. But I do think when you kind of look at the totality of this, you really see why quarterbacks can really drive the statistic. They can't really affect pressure rate, but they can affect whether that pressure turns into a sack because of their ability to throw the football the way and be smart with the ball. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff right now, obviously. So, yeah.
Do you want to just go through all 8? Sure. We don't need to do. I mean, we did it. We did an 8 sack game once before, and we did it in like 40 minutes. It was like the Carson Wentz 2022 or whatever year that was against Philadelphia. We don't need to go through all that, but let's buzz them real quick. Yeah. First one is with 14:56 to go in the second quarter. And it's kind of this weird play where I almost can't even tell if it's going to be a screen out to B-Rob because there's a movement on the line, but I don't think it's an actual screen. He's looking downfield, can't find anybody, looks to the flat, doesn't like what he sees. It came off a fake reverse action where if he came all the way back to, I think it's Zacchaeus who he faked the reverse to and just throws it to him. He's wide open. I don't know if that's part of the progression, but ultimately like Jayden's got to find somewhere to go with the football, even if it's over B-Rob's head out of bounds here, and instead he winds up taking a sack.
Yeah, to me, this feels like your classic like 3-level throw. We used to call it like Miami when I was here with Kyle. It's like you get a post by number 1, who's Terry. You get a crossing route by, the receiver on the ball to the offensive right. So you get, 1 is the post, 2 is the crosser. You're reading the safety, and then you have an element to the flat. So there's your 3 levels. And so to me, this feels. And again, you have to get someone to tell you this or not. It feels a little bit like a mental mistake by Jayden. Again, they're in quarters coverage. The Saints are. They 2 guys to the post end up bracketing the post. The backside safety ends up cutting the cross. It's played beautifully. They drop the guy in the reverse action. He's wide open. So ideally, you would go post, cross, flat, or bubble over there. And it just feels like he knew the flat. He knew that his outlet or his check down was to one of the sides. and then checked B-Rob and was like, oh no, I should have just stayed over there and hit it right there. So that's kind of what it felt like to me when I watched it. And again, this is something that happens with quarterbacks. They make mistakes. I think the thing that I like about it is he's working his progression. Then when he leaves the pocket and looks to run, he should just throw the football away, quite honestly. Like, that's really what should happen here. And so whose fault is this? I guess you'd say it's on Jayden Daniels, because I think the play design's good. The protection's pretty good. When you get out of the pocket, throw that sucker away and live to play another day.
So the second one I feel like is more indicative of some times where he gets himself into trouble, because the clock goes off in his head. There's good coverage downfield, and there's a little bit of pressure coming off Brandon Coleman. This is 12:59 to go, 3rd and 16 in the second quarter. And Jayden kind of steps up into pressure. And so when you talk about, Logan, I thought you put that really well. Quarterbacks can't control pressure rate. They can turn how many of those come in or turn into sacks. When you're a quarterback and you're starting to take on a little bit of pressure, can you evade the pressure by a simple slide up in the pocket, a little bit of movement here, a little bit of movement there, a check down quickly, and just whatever the methodology is or the mechanism is to get out of it? Or do you move around the pocket in a way that makes that pressure turn into a sack? And this is one where I feel, as we'll talk about with one or two more of these, where he takes a little bit of pressure and turns it into a sack. Not an A+ rep by Brandon Coleman by any means, but shouldn't have been a sack.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where, to me, this is, I don't know, it's the most kind of indicative of what his season's been in terms of taking sacks. And what I mean by that is, you know, he's a guy that likes to kind of like make big movements in the pocket. Big up, big back, big out. And when you look at some of the best guys in terms of managing pockets, like Joe Burrow comes to mind, it's a subtle step up. Tom Brady, subtle step up into the pocket. And again, this is a tough look because obviously this isn't the best rep by Brandon Coleman, but if you get a subtle step up, you're okay. I think that's good to kind of acknowledge. He does slip. That's another thing. So that might also accelerate his process. And they are running a TT on the inside, and there's a little bit of pressure from Brian Brzee, right? It kind of lifts Allegretti up. There's color in his face. But what I would like to see is just a subtle step up, eyes down the field, and then you understand the situation. It's 3rd and 16. They're dropping out. It's kind of like a cover 6, like it's quarters to one side, 2 to the field. They're getting really far out there. The linebackers are at 10 yards. You know the ball is probably going to go to the check down. Subtle step up, ball to B-Rob. And B-Rob, I'm not saying he's going to get a first down here, but it would be probably a 15-yard gain, right? So maybe he gets tackled just short of the sticks. But to me, that's what you'd like to see here. And now, again, this is why quarterback's the hardest position in sports, right? Because you are getting a little bit of pressure. You step up a little bit more. You slip. You see a little bit of green grass. And I think that's the thing with him is You're always going to be navigating his ability to make explosive plays. Because there's another play in this game where he scrambles on a 3rd and 15 and gets first down. And so for me, it's like, oh, B-Rob's out in front of me. I've got green grass. Maybe I can get out of here and scramble for an explosive play, which is totally within the realm of his possibility. And Dan Quinn in our post-game interview said something that I thought was really interesting. It's like with him, you got to live with some of that, but it's also kind of helping him understand when the journey's over. I thought that was really kind of poetic and kind of eloquently put. It's like when the journey's over, throw the ball away. This one I'm kind of like I'm not going to say, you know, he should have thrown the ball, but I'd like to see kind of just in terms of his general development, subtle step up, get the ball out, and live to play another day. And if you get a first down, great. And let me just say this too. I think this might be his best game of the year. So like all of this criticism comes in the context of that. Like he had a really fantastic game doing other stuff at a really high level. But this is a small example of how he probably turned this into a sack when he didn't have to.
Right. And that's the funny thing is like, again, the offensive line, they didn't play very well.
Yeah.
Jayden played spectacularly. The sacks themselves, which is the talking point, actually reflect kind of the opposite of that. And also, that's such a great point too about like the green grass, because there's like 3 of these where if I pause the tape and tell you, look at that lane, you're like, Jayden, run.
Yeah.
And the problem is the way that sometimes it feels like he takes like an extra half a shuffle to get out of the pocket instead of just taking off. And that extra half a shuffle is just the amount that a guy like Demario Davis needs to catch him. And in college, he got out 85% of the time on those. And now it's like more 50-50.
Yeah.
And it can be a sack for 0 yards, or it can be a 20-yard gain. And he had both of those in this game, so it's kind of hard to, again, you gotta manage, kind of live with it, because he can't get the big ones if he doesn't try the ones that don't work. Next sack, 1st and 10, 11:25 to go in the second quarter, right after the next drive. I think that's after the pick. It's a play action boot. There's no one open, and he probably should just throw this one away.
Yeah, it's play action boot. Kind of, you get that kind of hard run action to the offensive left. He boots out to the right. There's someone in the flat. There's someone kind of in the middle of the field, and there's someone clearing out to the far side. On this play, there's not, but like traditionally, that's what that play looks like. Defenses, in my opinion, are getting better and better at covering this. They cover it really well. There's nobody there. You're kind of running to the sticks. There's a flat defender there that's right in front of you. I say just if you can't make it, if you can't make an explosive play, you get a get out of jail free card. And what I mean by that is like you don't have to take a hit. You don't have to like strain for the first down. Like if you can't get it, throw it away. And I think that's, again, kind of one of those ones where this one specifically is like, hey, this is they win this down. That's okay. And there are times, and again, there are multiple times in this game, like there's that roll pass on 3rd and 1 where he gets out of a tackle and runs for a first down. There's the 4th and 1 where he dives over the pile. I mean, literally just like, MVP style of play from him. And so I understand why it's so hard to get him to understand that it's done, because he does have magic stuff happening for him. But again, this would be one where it's like, hey man, just get rid of the ball.
Right, and it takes like a little shove out of bounds. It's nothing crazy, but sometimes you do get blown up on the sideline. This is also 1st and 10. Like, if it's 3rd and 1, go ahead, stretch it, make a play.
Yeah.
If it's 1st and 10, let's live for the next down. Next one is the first play coming out of the 2-minute warning in the first half. This one I'm curious what you think, because it feels like he vacates another clean pocket here.
Yeah, and to me, this is a tough one, and I'm gonna like, if we're kind of assigning blame, I would kind of put this on the install of the play, and so this play, the way it's designed, to me, you've got Luke McCaffrey kind of inserting between the guard and the tackle to the offensive right. There's 2 receivers to the offensive left. They're trying to sell a run here on first down. This is designed, in my opinion, for like a cover 3, like where there's a box safety, there's a single high look, and what you're doing is you're bringing Terry across on a high cross. You're acting like you're blocking that linebacker to the near side there with Luke McCaffrey. He should step up. There should be a void right behind him, and you should be able to hit it for an easy completion. However, this is a split safety look. So when you run this run action, the person that you're trying to influence now is the half safety who's 12 yards off the ball. So that little token insert action is not going to affect that guy because he's got pass responsibilities first. So to me, this is really interesting because it's like in this look, you'd like Luke to probably run a corner, because then you would pull that half player out. You'd hit Terry coming across the middle of the field. And that might, and this is where it's so hard to be critical of a play design, because you say that actually might be the coaching point, and the rookie wide receiver didn't identify that it was cover 2 and he should have inserted on a different player or run a different route or made the check. So the one thing I would say is that this has great answers, this play, the way it's drawn up, great answers versus single high safety, which is probably why you're calling it on first down. However, versus 2 high safety or split safety, there's not a lot of answers, and there's not even really like a great check down option. So for me, like that's where like does Jayden take a sack here? Yes. Can Jayden get rid of the football? Yes. Does Jayden vacate a clean pocket? Yes. However, there's not a lot of answers down the field here, and that's just by play design. So if we're assigning blame, it's probably how the play was installed, maybe when the play was called, I don't know. Like again, like this is part of the deal when you call a play action pass on first down. Sometimes they got you, but could we have added layers here to make this a little bit easy for him to maybe have a check down or maybe influence the coverage in a different way? And that would be my one thought on this play.
It's also a hell of a play by Demario Davis, because there is so much space for Jayden to run into, and he chases him down, and we just haven't seen there are only so many dudes that can do that. And Davis is not necessarily at this point in his career someone you'd be like, oh, he can do that, but the anticipation that he plays with overcomes the fact that Jayden definitely would win that foot race if they were running 40-yard dashes, and he's able to escort him out of bounds for a 0-yard gain.
And I think the other thing here, just to kind of point it out, is like I actually like his process here, Jayden. I like his eyes. I like his feet. I like what he's looking at. I like that he sees that it's dead. And again, like now we're being a little nitpicky about, should he throw this away or should he, whatever. And I think like that's why this play is kind of interesting to talk about for sure.
One more sack on that drive, 2 plays later, 3rd and 10 now in the second quarter, 1:48 to go. They're in empty, and this is the one where he like almost doesn't realize that the blitzer's coming.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird play. What happened here?
Yeah, this is tough. This is a really tough play, and this is a tough blitz. And this is, I think, certain times you got to give credit to New Orleans and what they do. And this is kind of like these new blitzes, these zone pressures that are being popularized by kind of that Baltimore tree with what's his name up in Seattle, the head coach up there?
Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald, yeah.
Jesse Minter, the guys in LA now, like that crew.
Yeah, correct. And so you got all these guys up on the line of scrimmage. You don't really know who's dropping out. And what they're able to do is they're able to drop out 3 guys, one being a defensive lineman, 2 linebackers, and then they're rushing a defensive end now, a defensive tackle, and they're bringing 2 kind of nickel players off the offensive right. And so ideally you have enough protectors there, but what they've done is they've made you call the protection like you normally would. So bigs on bigs, like we're got good 4-man protection here. And then once they drop out, now the offensive line has to bump it across. And so a couple things that are happening here. One is usually a rule, kind of general rule of thumb for a chipper, and there's Jeremy McNichols on the right side, is you chip the widest rusher. So in this look, he chips the guy who he thinks is the widest rusher, which is like the nickel player, or the safety, excuse me. He chips the safety, and then the nickel comes off the perimeter. Why is that important? If I chip the nickel, now it allows Allegretti to see that the linebacker is dropping out. I can bump Dieter back, and then I can bump Cosby back, then I can bump Coleman back, and that extra little bit of time there would allow me to pick this up. So I think this is just a really well-designed blitz by New Orleans. The execution's excellent. And again, we had a little bit of a miscue. And again, this is a really hard look for McNichols here, so don't get me. This is not a criticism of him. Like, I've messed this up. I've messed this up before. Like, I know the coaching point because I've screwed it up, right? Like, that's the goal, is because if you chip the widest rusher, then you give time for everybody to bounce back across the formation. And I think the other thing that's tough about this and just important to acknowledge is that even if they were to identify it, Cosme loses to the inside really quickly, and it prevents the bump across even more. So I think this is a really well-disguised blitz. I think this is a really well-executed zone pressure. I understand why Jayden Daniels didn't see it. I understand why we didn't get picked up. And again, this is one of those ones you go to the sideline, you say, hey, man, in a perfect world, maybe you remike this or whatever. But I in watching it, I'm like, this is pretty clear as to this is a credit to New Orleans, and good job by them.
Yeah, if he could have somehow gotten the ball to OZ over the middle, great. But OZ also might have got his clock cleaned on that. Ideally, if McNichols chips the right guy, he might actually buy himself enough time to get a reception here. But none of that happens, and it's way before anything that Jayden can really do about it. All right, speaking of plays that didn't work based off how they were drawn up on the whiteboard, the 5th sack of the game is actually one of the most, I think, controversial play calls, if you will, of the game. And I think we should take a second to talk about this in general. It's the 3rd and 1 on the goal line. They've just had 2 successful carries, and for as bad as their run game was all day, we can talk about that more as well. They decide to go with the play action boot here. Luke McCaffrey, Dan Quinn came out and was basically like, yeah, we would have loved that player to get more of a chip on the defensive end. Luke doesn't really get a piece of Cam Jordan at all. And I'll just say, I don't really love this play call considering those factors, considering those 2 dudes and who they are. Cam Jordan is a 11-year vet. I don't know. He's been in the NFL forever. Yeah. And he has seen this play a million times. Luke is probably typically not in on this. It's probably Noah Brown who's out. So knowing that, even though this has been one of the Commanders' best plays all year, if I'm Cliff, do I probably go somewhere else? Certainly with the benefit of hindsight, I do. I understand why they called it, but it's a really tough look. And again, obviously there's nothing Jayden or really any of the linemen can do about this. This comes down to Cam Jordan not being fooled and Luke McCaffrey not getting a big enough piece of it. Yeah,
and again, this is basically goal line personnel, and I've run this as the backside tight end on the wing here. And again, that's essentially what Luke is. And the whole reason this works is because you're going to basically sell a block. It's not even a chip. It's like a full-on block on Cam Jordan. Because once you get your man player's eyes into the backfield, you are now open. So he kind of goes in like he's going to chip. Like, you got to sell this. Like, it almost, like if I was coaching this, I'd be like, hey, Luke, I don't care if you got to cut this guy. Like, cut him down. Because then the 2 players that have you kind of in approximately man-to-man coverage, they will lose you in coverage. You'll get up. You'll run to the back corner. Jayden will boot out. If he gets the perimeter, great, it's a touchdown. If not, he'll just nick it over to you. It's a really nice call. I like this a lot. This is, in terms of short yardage play, like, this is very high on my personal list of plays that I like. But again, to your point, like, you need to understand how absolutely critical it is that dude does not run up the field. It is the most imperative thing. Like, if he runs up the field, the play's dead no matter what. So, like, obviously here I am, what is this, 5 years after I'm done playing? Like, I still have, Vietnam level flashbacks of the importance of making sure that dude does not go up the field, right? You block that dude, you make him feel run, and then you go. This is not the correct technique. And so that's where it's so frustrating. To your point, is like, I'm sure that they installed this. I'm sure that they ran this with him. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. Because like you said, like, not only is this potentially a Noah Brown play, this also could have easily been a Zach Ertz play.
Yeah, I was going to say, the other thing too is Ertz is out at this point. And so if they typically run this out of 13 personnel, then instead of it being Luke, who's he has a tough angle to try to get down to Cam Jordan. And that's where
again, like, tighten your split, man. Get in, get in there. The most important thing is that he does not get off the field. Right. So go ahead. Yeah.
So if that's a tight end, then that split's probably going to be, more comfortable being tighter. Zach probably knows that. If it's Noah, like, he is a veteran, he probably knows that. Instead, it's Luke, who's a rookie, who's like, how close do I get on this? And actually, then it looks like he's lost by alignment.
Sorry to cut you off, Craig, but this is actually 14 personnel. This would be 14 because Trent Scott's in.
Yes.
So this would be like their heavy 13 or heavy 14, however you want to look at that. And again, so the more I look at this, the more I'm like, this probably is a Zach thing. And he would probably be in a tight 2-point. He's probably going to bang down hard on this end, make him feel run, make him feel cut off. Both those guys are going to lose him, and then you would just work to the back pylon, and you'd probably be open for a touchdown. But this is, again, where, like, the play call to me is right. It's the execution that falls short, and for all the reasons we just talked about. Like, is this Luke's fault? Technically, yes, but also, like, did he get reps at it? Has he prepared this? I don't know. We don't know. But I like the call. I don't like the execution, but you could say that about pretty much every call over the course of a game.
Sure. And I think that's actually a good point. We'll get to these last 2 sacks in a second, but, like, I think it's actually a good point to make overall about this game is I think that this was one of their worst detail games of the season. And there's a great example, actually their first drive, which ends in a touchdown that Terry just magically creates and Jayden magically creates. But, like, on that sequence, there is touchdown wiped off because he leaves early, and so it's the illegal shift. On the very next play, they are incredibly lucky that it's not a fumble or that B-Rob or McNichols, whoever it was, recovered that fumble because Jayden, for some reason, is like, I'm close to the goal line. I'm on top of people. Whistle hasn't blown. Let me see if I can reach the ball out. And it's like that level of detail of like, hey, let's just protect the football, live. Like, that's the kind of stuff that they preach all the time. And then Cosme has a hold on the very next play, and then somehow the play after that's a touchdown. So it works out, but, like, talk about lack of attention to detail in this game on some of this stuff that just, there's the read or the arc option where B-Rob's out in front as a blocker, and he just reaches out and grabs a dude, and you're like, we don't need that holding penalty there. Like, that's a killer. So there's things like that throughout this game, and I don't know whether it's coming off the bye, because it's kind of similar when they played Dallas, and they were really bizarrely out of sync and out of whack coming off a long rest there. Like, I don't know what that was all about, but that is not who they've been most of the year, and it's clearly not who they can be and possibly win against a team like Philadelphia.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'm not sure why it is. They did do some different stuff in terms of running the football from formations and motions, and they had some really cool stuff off of it. They had a leak route off of one that ended up getting covered, but really liked the play design. They had the touchdown OZ, which was called back. Like, cool stuff off that kind jet motion, bringing a sifter back, bringing a flat guy back. Like, again, we've said this before, but when I'm going to just reiterate the point is that sometimes when you're on a little bit of you've put more in, you can't own it the way you want to own it. And I do think that pops up a little bit here. Because again, you not only are you putting in new plays, but now Noah Brown's out, and maybe he was the one who got all the reps at it. And now you're getting OZ some reps, Diami some reps, and you're kind of rotating through to see who's going to fit in.
And your center's out, which was unexpected.
Yeah, and I think that showed up a lot in this game too, and we'll talk about that more with the offensive line, just in terms of cadence and things like that. So, yes, there was a lot of things in this game that felt a little loose detail-wise, and it makes sense. You probably put a little bit more in the bye because you're excited about it. They're good plays, and they are good plays. But you get new people and new roles. The center's hurt, or he's sick, and it ends up being just a little bit off in terms of detail, and I think that showed up pretty extensively.
All right, let's quickly knock out these last 2 sacks. 2nd and 14, 1:22 to go in the third quarter. They got 3 receivers to the right, 2 to the left. OZ runs, I think is that a choice route? Is that
looks like a choice route to me.
Texas route? It winds up running like a little angle route. And he wins, and Jayden's staring right at him, and he just doesn't throw it. And again, offensive line takes some pressure here. Unfortunately, if he reads the other side of the field, De'Ami Brown is wide open for a touchdown on that corner route. But like, it's fine. You chose the left side for whatever reason. You got to get dude open. I don't know why he doesn't throw it. And then he takes a sack.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one that's probably most obvious to me in terms of like being on him. And you have to talk to him like, hey, why didn't you throw it? It's open. Yeah. Let it rip.
Like that happens to quarterbacks in every single game.
Yeah,
I don't know why it happens, but it does.
And it's weird because like I think the first thing I watched from the passing game was the sacks, and I was like, man, like what's going on? Like he missed the check down, the subtle step up check down to B-Rob, he misses this one. I'm like, man, did Jayden not play that well? And then you go back and watch the totality of all the dropbacks, you're like, dude, there's like probably 5 where he elevates past, he sits in versus a muddy pocket and delivers a great throw. So like this is, again, I would just have to say this, it's not a criticism of him. These are some of his like quote unquote bad plays from this game. But for every one of these, there's probably 2 or 3 excellent elevations of the offense. And so again, like, should he make this throw? Yeah. But like when you watch even the best quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, they have plays where you're like, why didn't you throw that? Like, why did you take this sack or why did you do whatever? And that happens. And this to me feels like one of those plays. Yeah.
And it also just, again, the pocket movement thing. He has room to step up a little bit here. It's like a subtle step up and maybe you find something. Instead, he tries to escape the pocket out of the back. And that's where Chase Young is. So, not a great rep from Coleman, but he does wash him high enough that if Jayden doesn't step back into it, it's probably not a sack. And then the last one, 3rd and 4, 9:04 to go. This one, Andrew Wiley takes on some pressure. Coverage does a good job. Coverage does a good job / gets bailed out by the fact that Olamide Zaccheaus is tackled in the middle of the field, and this should be an illegal contact and an automatic first down. And instead, Jayden has nowhere to go with the football and winds up getting sacked.
Yeah, this is bad. This is a bad no call. And I'm not a criticize the refs type of guy, but this is a bad call because like it looks like to me like they're running some type of sail concept. So he's going to inside release and then kind of bend out around this guy. And by all accounts, just looking at this, like he would have absolutely killed this guy. So this to me feels like Jayden's waiting for that to clear. Dude gets tackled and it's like, oh shoot, I'm going to panic a little bit, which makes sense because I do think he's just going to loop right around this defender and this could be a touchdown potentially. So maybe they thought that they got their feet tangled up, whatever the officials thought. To me, this is on this illegal contact in terms of making this an impossible play for Jayden to make. And again, it spooks him. Maybe he could get to the check down. I understand if that's his primary read, it's man coverage. You're working your best matchup and that dude just gets tackled to the ground. And again, like, I don't think I'm being harsh here in describing it as a tackle, Craig. Like, no, that's what it looks like, right? Like,
he literally wraps his arms around him and tackles him. And to your point, if it's man coverage and your guy goes down and you see a little bit of space and you're Jayden Daniels, like, 3rd and 8, we can convert that. Like, let's take off. Let's run. Like, I actually don't really have a huge problem with that. And like, Wiley, I think this is also a good example of kind of how offensive line play lives in shades of gray. Like, there is a chip here from Sinnott, and then basically the Saints DN gets a running head start and just rams into Wiley, and Wiley gets knocked back like 4 or 5 yards, but then he anchors from there. And if Jayden can, just step up in the pocket a little bit, maybe someone else comes open. But again, I also understand why he did what he did. It's a little bit of win by the coverage with the assist from the ref. It's a little bit of a loss by Wiley. It's made into a sack ultimately by Jayden / a good play by the Saints. But I don't necessarily like hate the process. Sometimes you do a good process and the other team makes a play. That's football.
Yeah, this is one where it kind of, again, like, and this is not a criticism of him, but the guy falls down, his receiver falls down, gets tackled, whatever you want to call it, and then I think it spooks him because I do think Wiley, I think, settles this. I watch a lot of offense. I think he settles this. I think it's there. The problem is, like, where do you go with the ball then? Because you got to flat to that side, and you're really relying on that as your man beating concept to the side. So again, like this to me should be a non-issue because of the DPI, but it happens. And again, he ends up taking a sack, probably doesn't have to. But again, I'm not sure what the next step would be other than to try to hit Sinnott crossing the formation late just to get the ball out. And maybe that's what the coaching point would be there.
Yeah. But there is a little bit of a lane that's just closed down quickly. That's the nature of the NFL. Space disappears fast. And that's something that I think, he's been incredible, and he might be a 1,000-yard rusher this year. But when he learns just where the spaces really are, like that next level Lamar supernatural feel that takes a couple years to develop because it's the NFL, that's where he just takes off to a completely different level.
Yep.
Take Command Podcast, Logan Paulson, Craig Hoffman, happy to be with you, breaking down the tape of the Commanders offense and specifically Jayden Daniels' performance. We'd also love to hear from you, hoffmanshow.com/survey. The survey will be open until the end of the year, and you can provide your feedback on the show, and we'd love to hear from you. And by the way, as a special gift for participating in that survey, for letting us know what you think, we're going to give you 50% off the brand new Take Command merch, which is available at the 1067 The Fan store from Breaking Tea. Okay, Logan, let's talk about Jayden Daniels' performance. We just talked about it through the lens of the sacks, but once you get beyond those, 8 plays, there is just so much good on this tape. His ability to make plays with his legs, some of the arm stuff he does, the platform, the reads. I mean, look, the Terry stuff, he's got 3 big misses, all of which actually hit Terry in the hands. And Terry, I'm sure, would be like, I should catch those. Jayden would say, I got to put them on him. But those are all good reads, good recognition, good decision-making. What you said earlier in the pod, you thought this might have been his best game of the year. Why?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the reasons you just said. Like, I was going through and I'm pulling clips for the Command Center show, which airs on Thursday or whatever, Friday. And I'm going to do a breakdown on there talking about this. And so obviously you get the kind of the amazing plays, the touchdown to Terry where he falls down and gets back up and throws it. The third one where he breaks out and does like a backflip and gets a first down, and the 15 yards. Like, those are plays that everyone's going to recognize and see and be like, wow, this is what makes him special. But to me, it's not even that. It's quite frankly like the stuff that he does. Like, there's a corner route that's completed to Terry. It's cover 2. So he IDs cover 2. He stares down the flat, like the smash or the out, the 5-yard out. The corner, who's kind of in between, steps up to the out. He resets and throws the corner with an absolute laser beam of a throw. Great job, man. Like, absolutely great job. The holding call that Diami gets on, it's like a 3rd and 15 where they throw the screen to whoever it is.
To Terry, yeah.
He checks to that versus nickel pressure. Like, way to be aware of it. They check to a run in the red zone where they get B-Rob a 5-yard gain. Like, again, so seeing, understanding what my answers are versus certain things, great. The touchdown to Terry in terms of ball velocity, just the snap on his release, just in terms of looking healthy. There was a throw over the middle of the field late to OZ where they're running a spot concept to the offensive right. He looks at Demario Davis for a second. He sees that he's pushing to the spot. He delivers an absolute laser beam through a tight window right to OZ, who makes the catch for a first down. The throw to Diami on that high cross, like putting that ball in a perfect position. And so every single throw, I felt like there was some higher level stuff going on where I'm manipulating coverage. I'm getting the ball out quick. I'm being patient where I need to be patient. I'm hurrying where I need to hurry. And to me, that was the thing that really stood out to me in terms of how he played the quarterback position. It wasn't like, oh yeah, these big plays are great. And that's obviously true. And there's certain games where you watch him and he's just kind of out there. He's throwing hitches. He's being kind of a game manager. I felt like this game he elevated the offense in a way that I haven't seen him do probably since Cincinnati, maybe. I don't know. Like, it's been a while. And he really, maybe New York, the second New York game, he really did an excellent job and looked to me like a true NFL quarterback. There's a couple times like that one he throws to Bates on that kind of mesh that ends up being a first down where there's a free runner right in the pocket. He narrows his base, gets the ball out right over top of that, kind of with a weird arm angle. And we could go through every single throw, but they all were like that. There was just a simple flat route to Zach, or a simple stick route to Zach. The guy's kind of clouding the window. He pumps to the flat and then comes back and throws the stick with excellent feet, excellent base, excellent accuracy. So again, he took 8 sacks, which is not great. You don't want that. But the dynamic plays he made, and then the consistent just NFL quarterback stuff, identifying coverage, getting the ball where it needed to go. I came out and I was like, dang, this is really good stuff, really high level stuff by him.
Yeah, and he was pretty leveraged in this game, in part because of some protection stuff. Also, there was a lot of zone read in this game where he had to make decisions. And, after the game, I was like, I don't know how well he managed that part. Going back and looking at it, like, there was 2 that I'm like, that probably, but we're talking about 8 or 10 zone reads in this game where he gives it, correctly on some of these that get stuffed because the blocking is bad on the front side. And again, we'll get there. But like he largely made correct reads on that. There in the first half of this game, there were like 4 or 5 plays where they stunted on the right side of the O-line. And Sam Cosmi and Andrew Wiley had trouble passing it off. Cosmi just did not. Cosmi had one of his worst games of his career, frankly, in this game. And so Jayden's taking on pressure, and he figures out a way to move around it or get the ball out. And he just consistently had to make higher level plays. And the Saints did a good job in some coverage stuff where he, as you said, moved them just enough, and the ball's over and outstretched hands or around a guy. And the snap he has, it's just really good stuff consistently throughout the games, which is why it's kind of weird that the offense got bogged down. It felt like in the second half is like I don't know if they went 3 and out. I don't think they went 3 and out the entire game.
Yeah.
Like this entire that's got to be like a 12-play drive. That's probably an 8 or 9-play drive. That's probably like a 10-play drive. I guess the only 3 and out was the end of the first half where the half ended after 3 plays, but it wasn't like they were on a 3rd down and were going to punt. Right. So they just consistently found ways to convert. And sometimes that was also him making plays with his legs. I mean, the 4th and 1 where he just is like, I got to figure out where to go. And he finds it. Like the competitiveness of him, Dan talks about all the time, but like you see it.
Like that call that New Orleans had up, was literally like, we're going to pinch the end. You're going to take away the run. We have an overhang player. And then Demario Davis is going to fit in between. So there literally was like no place to go. If you hand it off, it's going to be a tackle for loss. If you take it, you're going to get tackle for loss. And then for him to kind of Superman figure that out, fake it to the outside, dive over the pile, like that's a big time play on the 45 on your own end, and on your own side of the field. Like, and again, like the I know he missed these throws, but the reads on those Terry throws at the end of the game, like where he missed them, I understand he missed them. But like he's reading dagger on the first one to Terry. And so you only throw the through or the clear on a dagger versus man-to-man coverage or 2-man. And it's man-to-man coverage. And Terry smokes his dude. And so the fact you even got there in terms of read is like just showing how you're seeing the defense. So, and you missed the throw, whatever. The all go that he throws to Terry that just goes off his fingertips because Terry kind of slows down. Like the fact you even saw that, like he just felt like he was seeing it so well. Which was great, which was so cool to see. Because again, like every week, you're like, can he keep getting better? Can he play better? And I felt like this was a game where he just really understood and could visualize what New Orleans was trying to do to him. And he was just kind of able to pick him apart. And, really, really impressive performance by him, I thought.
You talk about the mental toughness too. The last drive of the game is where 2 of those go balls come. And this is also why Cliff, should he have done this, done that? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Cliff seemed to call a pretty good game, and he just stays aggressive, and he's finding shots in the 4th quarter. Like, I think that's something too that's really impressive about Cliff is like he found ways to generate big plays that should have been daggers. And one of them, ironically, on a dagger where they dropped the coverage, as we just mentioned. But like, he found ways that were going to be knockout punches, and Jayden missed them barely by a matter of feet, inches. But on the final drive, there's 2 of the misses to Terry. First one's on a 2nd and 8. It's the all go versus cover 2. And on the very next play, instead of like, oh man, I got to go make a play, I got to get it all back, he just checks the ball down to send it. Like it's a quick play.
Oh yeah, that was a nice play.
Takes what's there, send it. Rumbles forward. They almost get to the first down. Instead, it's 4th and 1, and then Jayden is able to convert. By the way, Michael Dieter did not have a great game on that particular play. He buried his dude, which is why Jayden was able to jump over.
Nice.
If that's just like a regular block, there's nowhere to go. Dieter just absolutely pancakes his dude, and Jayden jumps over the pancake, which is a phrase. Jumps over the pancake, a phrase I never thought I'd say on a podcast, but here we are. So they get the first down. On the very next play, that is the next Terry go ball that he misses. And next play is a run for B-Rob. Now it's 3rd and 3. Bang, little easy one to Bates. They get another first down. He didn't get like, oh my God, I got to get it all back. Yeah. Oh my God, I have to do too much. Instead, he's just like, all right, missed opportunity. That sucks. I'll get him next time. But I'm not going to go create the next time. I'll wait till it comes to me.
Yeah. And again, like in this game where he took 8 sacks, and the national media, like I heard PFF talking about, oh, this is why people worry about taking sacks because it kills drives, and I get it. But I think if you were to watch the game the way we've watched it, you'd see all the positive stuff. Like on the on the play to Terry, the first touchdown that he throws where it's just this Tampa 2 look. He like takes the ball down and runs the perimeter, like versus that look versus that route concept, which is just smash 2 corners, back over the ball, and then 2 sits on the outside. Like you just throw the ball right to the back, he'll turn around, catch it, and you run right at the Tampa player who's backing up into the defense. And so they call that same play later in the game, and I'd be darned, man, if he just didn't catch the snap right away. B-Rob sneaks through. There's a pressure coming. There's an unblocked guy right over the top of that dude to B-Rob for a 9-yard gain. Like even in the context of the game, like he just seemed like he knew what was happening. And there was a couple like we talked about on the zone pressure where he takes that sack from the corner, like where he obviously got or whatever. But I'd say on the whole, what did he have? 49 dropbacks. Like he made really good decisions about when to scramble, about taking care of the football on a lot of them. And again, just a really impressive performance. And I think, like to your point on that last little sequence of drive there, you were talking about like that ball to Diami on that kind of deep crosser is just special, quite frankly, and again, it gets taken back because of a hold, which is a good call. It's an annoying call, but it's a good call. And I can't say enough positive things about his performance outside of the sacks.
Yeah. Which brings us to, I guess, the last little piece, which isn't really about Jayden, but why he was so leveraged in this game, why he had to drop back so many times. The run game was just really rough in this one. And I came out of this game, I actually caught myself on the post-game show. And it's easier for me to have to try to be the rational one when Chris Russell is in your box as opposed to you. I just get to be irrational radio man when I'm sitting here next to you. When it's Russell, I'm like, all right, one of us has got to have our hands on the wheel here at 10-2. But I was like, there are too many times that I've come out of games thinking that Cliff should have done X. And then I watched the tape and I'm like, nope, Cliff was right. I'm an idiot. What am I talking about? So I was like, I feel like right now they should have run the ball more, but I want to see how it played out. And after watching it back, I get why Cliff, he didn't really abandon the run because there still are like some good gains late in this game, but they didn't lean into the run in the way that I thought they would, but it's because they didn't run the ball like we thought they would.
Yeah. No, I think that's 100% right. And going back and watching the film, specifically the running back runs, obviously when you look at Jayden's scrambles, that really elevates the total. But when you look at Brian Robinson's runs, it was really messy up front, very, very messy. And what I mean by that is you got guys losing one-on-ones. One of the 5 guys or one of the 6 guys, if you include Bates. Sinnott had a couple losses too, where you're losing like in a situation and it negatively affects the outcome of the game. They all kind of took turns doing that. Like no one had a perfect game in that regard. If there's one guy who played well in the run game was Wiley. Like he didn't really have a lot of mental mistakes, did a really nice job. Didn't have a lot of physical losses, but everybody else, man, there's a bunch of that. I thought New Orleans also came out and lined up in some kind of funky fronts. Like I actually had to call one of my O-line buddies and I was like, what would you actually call the spacing on this front? He's like, I call this the jam front, where you cover the 3 guys on the inside. I'm like, but there's a 4-eye, there's a backside shade. And he's like, this is jam in principle, but like they're fudging you a little bit to kind of mess with the angles and stuff. And so that's really hard to do on the fly with a backup center, like getting that stuff targeted is tough. And they did that a couple times. And then also I thought they, when they're running new looks, new runs, they didn't have the details all the way locked in on some of those. You get guys unblocked because of rules and counts. So there was a kind of a comedy of errors in this game in terms of, Dieter's going the wrong way on a couple plays, the snaps off so you can't get the zone read.
The timing was really funky too on those. Like Dieter's moving before everybody. I mean, he's the guy snapping it, so of course, but like the harmony that an O-line moves with and that is there with Biotish, it was not there with Dieter.
Yeah, and so again, like this isn't one guy. This isn't like, so-and-so played really bad. It's like everybody didn't play their best game. Dieter had some issues. He also had some good stuff like you talked about on the 4th and 1. But on the whole, this was maybe the messiest performance they've had as an offensive line. Like even when you watch the Philly game, the guys are getting beat, but they're going to the right guys. They're in good battles. Here they're kind of going the wrong way. They're letting guys run through gaps. Like they're getting kind of stoned at the line of scrimmage, stuff that we haven't really seen from this group. And I will say the New Orleans defensive line specifically played really well. Their 2 ends. We talked about Granderson. We talked about Chase Young. We talked about what's his name, number 94 for them.
Cam Jordan,
number 98. They're huge edge players, and they set physical edges. And then you look at John Ridgeway on the interior. He played a great game. And number 93 for them had the silent count timed up perfectly. He's penetrating gaps. He's splitting double teams. We can't get to the linebacker. Like it was a it was a little bit of a slugfest in there, and kudos to them. They did a great job, and it was for all of the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to the Saints too. Like Darren Rizzi, this is good tape for him overall in terms of can you inspire a team to play physically on both sides of the ball?
Yeah.
There are some absolute slobber knocker hits in this game. Like interior, not on ball carriers, but so like you probably didn't see them on TV. But there's one play where Bates and like John Bates will hit the F out of somebody.
He's been, and I've said this to you before, like maybe I don't know if on air, but like in passing, like he's had a really just a physical, kind of tough guy, blue-collar year. Maybe one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, like no joke. And I remember the player you're talking about gets wrecked in the hole. Yeah.
Like I've never seen Bates get hit by that. Like not just stunned where it's stalemate. He gets knocked back into the back 3-4 yards. And we'll talk about the defense quickly here in a second. We're going to do more of the defense on the Thursday pod as we talk about some of the changes they made and how those can translate to the Eagles matchup. But we'll do a quick buzz of the defense for this game. But like there's a play late in the game. I think it's the last drive of the game where New Orleans is still running it and just being like, hey, you're going to give us this. And I think it's MVS just absolutely escorts Quan Martin out the club. And you're like, whoa, that's serious. And that doesn't happen to guys like Quan Martin. So I think there is probably stuff where Quinn on tape is getting in front of them yesterday on Tell the Truth Monday and is like, guys, we can't get out physical like this. Yeah. You have to, at some point, as independent, neutral analysts here, be like, yeah, that's true, but also hat tip to the Saints on blowing some of this stuff up with pure physicality.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Like this, in some ways, I think it's good that it happened this week.
Yeah,
because that's how Philly plays. They play very similar to that, and so you got to make sure your mouthpiece is in. You got all the screws on your helmets are nice and tight. Make sure that's nice and fit because it's going to be one of those games. And so I think it's good that you got a taste of that this week because I speaking from experience. I've been blown up in the hole. I've been knocked down. I've been thrown to the ground, and that feels bad. It doesn't feel good. You want to make sure you're improving on film. And I would approach that next week with a little bit more of a mindset. And so I think it's good. It's good you kind of got beat. It's good that you won, but also kind of got beat up because then you can kind of refocus and say, hey, like the reason we were so dominant versus Tennessee is because we ran the ball so effectively. Like we need to bring that type of mindset every single week. And I think it's also important to note that I think you see the importance of Tyler Biadasz, not only as a player, obviously very significant there in terms of targeting protections, targeting runs, all those different things, but also just in terms of the leadership. Like he's a guy that when you're on the sideline, like I pace back and forth between possessions and sometimes I'll see him. And he's a guy that maybe doesn't say a lot, but is very, very demonstrative when he's talking to people. And you can tell that he's kind of like the goose at the head of the V, like he's leading everybody forward. And I think not having him out there was significant. And I think that's something else we got to talk about. We'll save it for the preview show, but hopefully he's back. But you lose Ertz, you lose maybe Jeremy Chin for a week with the concussion. Like this becomes a little bit dicey in terms of making sure you got enough pass catchers on offense, and losing one of your better players on defense is going to be tough too. So yeah, the injuries definitely are a big. I mean, you saw him in the game too. Like some of the stuff where I think they could have gotten some extra conversions, or that play in the red zone that we talked about. Like that's a Zach Ertz play, and unfortunately, that showed up. Chin's absence showed up in a big way on a couple of plays late in this game, but. We also had the Marshawn Lattimore edition, which changed a bunch of stuff. So let's talk about the defense real quick before we get on out of here. Take command, Logan Paulson, Craig Hoffman, talking about the Commanders' defense and their performance against the New Orleans Saints. Really interesting choices made by Joe Witt Jr. in the second half. They tried a bunch of stuff. Hey, how much will Marshawn Lattimore change your defense? Introduce a couple of new packages. We saw a four cornerback nickel package. We saw some big dime packages. Dime. We saw like 3 safety dime. Like we saw a bunch of different stuff, and I think it was cool. I don't know if that's a Marshawn Lattimore edition or if that's more of a, we had the bye week. Let's get our best players on the field type of thing. Whatever it is. Yeah. They played a little more base defense than they played over the course of the year. Like they did a lot of different stuff.
And they did some funky stuff in base too, where they'd have they actually went down to just Lattimore at corner. And they had 3 safeties and 3 linebackers in to match New Orleans with the fullback. A really critical choice they made was Juwan Johnson, the tight end, 83 that we talked about on the preview show, is converted wide receiver. They treated him like a wide receiver, which wound up becoming really, really important on the 2-point conversion when he was being covered by a corner and Noah Igbenogany gets the PBU. But a bigger picture versus getting caught up in the minutia here. what did you make of their defensive performance?
So last year, when we were watching Dallas, and obviously I'm making reference to them because that's where Joe Wood Jr. was, that's where Dan was. There were times where you'd watch them rush the passer, and you'd see guys, 4 or 5 guys win one-on-ones like almost immediately. And you're like, that's a dangerous group. But that's because they got Micah Parsons. They got a Diggy Zua. They've got pieces there, and that makes sense. And there were times in this game where that's what it was. Dante Fowler winning a one-on-one. Obviously the Trevor Penning, their right tackle, really struggled in this game. But you got Fowler winning. You got Bobby Wagner winning on a blitz. You got Frankie Louvu winning on a blitz. You got Jerzon winning. Like, Duran had a couple really nice wins rushing from different spots in the front. And, Dorrance Armstrong had a sack. Like, and you're just like, there were times watching the pressure and the coverage and the speed with which they would kind of expand and adjust to route concepts and rush, where you're like, this feels like what they wanted it to feel like last year, or what it felt like last year in Dallas. And, they don't have Michael Parsons here. And I think that was something that I took away with is the majority of the game, outside of literally a handful of plays, like 5 plays. Like, this is probably like in the same way that it was like Jayden Daniels' best performance. This felt like a really, really good performance for the defense. And obviously, like in the second half, some penalties kind of changed some fortunes. There's a 3rd and 10 that's converted. There's a 3rd and 10 that's converted with illegal hands to the face. There's another 3rd and long that's converted because of illegal hand on the quarterback. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the second half that really changed the complexion of this game. But in terms of speed, specifically on 3rd down, 3rd and long, I thought, man, this is a fun group to watch.
Yeah, they had 19 pressures in the game per PFF.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good day at the office. And to your point, just how much those penalties really changed the game. Like, what changed between Rattler and Haener? They committed more dumb penalties in the second half. Like, it's really what it was.
Well,
so first,
yeah, good. I was going to say, like, in the first half, like, just there's a holding call that negates a 25-yard completion for the Saints, right?
Yep.
Bring it back. The MVS drops a deep crosser. And he drops it out for a first down. So there's 3 first downs right there that are not a thing because of mistakes by them and because of penalties. And I'm sure you're going to talk about the second half here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, first half, you go basically 3 and out. It's 4 plays, but one of them is the 25-yard gain that is called back because there's a hold on Johnny Newton. And then they get a great rush on what is now 3rd and 13, bang, off the field after 3 plays. They get 1 first down on the second drive, 3 and out, ending in the interception on the 3rd drive, 3 and out on the 4th drive, ending in a sack. And then they give up a little bit they give up, I guess, 1 first down on the final drive of the half that New Orleans had. Second half, they give up 1 first down on their opening drive. They should go 3 and out on their second drive of the second half, and that's where the BSJ penalty comes in, which is so frustrating. Guy, get your hands down.
Yeah.
Quit playing with high hands so you don't hit people in the face, because it didn't affect the play at all. They look into the other side, and it's a free penalty. And then they eventually give up the field goal. And then they later on the next drive of the half, their 3rd drive of the half, like, Louvu should have had an interception after 1 first down. Yeah. And then you have the final drive of the game. They barely gave up first downs in this game is basically, I guess, the point that I'm making.
Yeah, no, I think it's 100% right. And it's literally just a little bit of luck change. Like, there's that deep ball that Rattler throws that MVS catches, which he dropped in the first half. It should be a pick. Chin's right there. Quan's right there. Like, there's the PI on the keeper that they have where it probably shouldn't have been a PI or a personal foul, on, where he tackles him on the keeper and they thought it was head and neck, but it was obviously on the replay not head and neck, and ended up being a first down. There was the one where they're backed up where they get the completion and they get the 15-yard foul on top of that. And then you pointed this out too, and I was standing right there. There's, Frankie Louvu's getting a face mask and getting tackled to the ground by the guard. Like, you could have easily had offsetting penalties there. Negate the
or
down.
Just don't call the roughing penalty that's not, and then it's a safety.
Yeah, and so again, there was a lot of stuff in that second half that kind of flipped the tide. And I'm not saying that the refs are perfect or the refs should be absolved or anything like that. But I think when you're looking at the difference in the 2 halves in terms of defensive production, they get 3 first downs that either off of an explosive play or off of a penalty that is like literally the difference in the game.
There's literally 1 bad drive. I guess 2. I would say the drive the first drive of the 4th quarter. Because, by the way, between the offense holding the ball and the defense doing a good job, New Orleans ran 6 plays in the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
like they come out, they get the ball to start the fourth quarter, and on like 4 or 5 plays in a row, they get first downs, and that is less than ideal. They got some big runs in there. They have a just like little dump off play that Rattler makes a nice play. There's some on the penalty. So like a lot of stuff kind of happens on that drive. And then on the final drive of the game, they just kind of got ran on in a way that was really weird. And I think the other thing that I want to talk about more on Thursday, because one, we'll know more about the injury stuff by Thursday. And two, I think how it flexes into the next opponent is more interesting than just spending a ton of extra time on what's already kind of a long podcast reviewing what they did this game. Is some of the personnel choices of when they deployed nickel versus big nickel and who was playing. Like Derek Forrest was playing a lot in this game, and I don't know whether I think Percy Butler might have gotten hurt on a special team situation.
Yeah, I saw him off the field like holding his arm. Yeah,
and so late in this game, like some of that stuff is on Defo, but also like there's one play where Chin is stuck playing in more of a man-to-man situation against MVS. Like, don't know what's kind of happening on that play. But there's just some interesting choices that if I'm the Eagles, I'm like, I want to get that look again. And that's dangerous. And so I think we should probably look into that a little more. But if you have any high-level thoughts on kind of how they deploy their personnel in this game, I think that was one of the things that really stood out to me about watching this defense.
Yeah, another thing that I thought was interesting, and this is not all the time, but I thought they were able to play kind of some of their base coverage structures a little bit more straight. So, for example, there was a play, I think it was like a 3-by-1 maybe. Lattimore's on the left, he's by himself. There's 3 guys to the right. And usually, like over the course of the season, usually there's always variance here, but like that safety's kind of right in the middle of the field, like right over the ball. He can play the single receiver side or the 3 receiver side. This week, I saw him shading a little bit more to the 3 receiver side, and they would just straight man up the Lattimore side, which was, again, like when you bring a guy in like that, and, I don't know the play you're talking about with Jeremy Chin on MVS, but like some of those looks, they're able to kind of maintain interesting matchups because there is safety elf over the top, because of how they've structured this with Lattimore on the perimeter. And I will say this, I said this on the Command Center show, and I'll say it here too. One of the things that really stuck out to me is just how Lattimore moves, his strength, his understanding of leverages and understanding of where to be. And, is he the best corner in the NFL? Like, I don't think so, but is he really, really good? And it's fun to see a guy who is that good and allows you to do more stuff that you want to do in terms of, helping guys in certain coverage structures, making sure you got 4/3 from a coverage standpoint because of his talent. So that was one thing that stuck out to me, just generally from a coverage structure standpoint, and something that I think will be very helpful versus Philly in terms of flooding zones and kind of stopping some of the stuff they want to do.
Yeah, there's a couple of times I was like, what coverage are they in? Can't figure that out, because they were able to just shift and mold. And I feel like they definitely played a little bit more man in this game as well. So it'll be fun to see what they do against Philadelphia. All right, that is our show for today. We'll talk more about the defense and how it matches up with Philly's offense on Thursday. Of course, we'll see what adjustments the Commanders' offense has made. By the way, Terry moved around more in this game than he has probably all year, something that on some level evolves from the first Philly matchup. So we'll talk about how that plays out on the Thursday show as well. And then, of course, make sure you're subscribed, not only here on the podcast, but on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan, so you can join us live for the post-game show on Sunday. For Logan, I'm Craig. We'll see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around.